Welcome to Days of Roar, a Detroit Tiger podcast brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Borash. I am here with Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold in a post-Thanksgiving Day edition of Days of Roar. Lots of fun stuff happened today, and we're going to discuss that and all kinds of other fun stuff we think that may start happening over the course of the next 10 to 14 days. So let's jump straight into it. What's up, Ev?
Yeah, it's been a really busy week, not only Thanksgiving and then also going to the Michigan-Ohio State game on Saturday. My wife is a Michigan grad, so we got tickets and got pretty good tickets too. We were real close to the action and then ended up getting on the field after the game because everybody jumped out and stormed the field. That was a lot of fun. Thanksgiving was great. Time with family is always awesome, but spent a lot of my week tracking the Kenta Maeda news as kind of early on in the process, I had heard, hey, look, the Tigers are showing some serious interest in him. That was several days ago that I reported that. And then I had heard, hey, look, like they're really gaining momentum towards a deal. I picked up on that before Thanksgiving. And then they came to an agreement on a contract on Sunday. So the Tigers have signed Kenta Maeda to a 2-year, $24 million contract. There's going to be a physical that's going to be on Monday. So this podcast could be out by the time that physical is complete and the deal becomes official. But yeah, Kenta Maeda, as long as that physical goes well, which I'm anticipating it will, is going to be a Tiger. Well, and I think that's exciting because, one, it's Scott Harris's first multi-year deal that he's ever signed anyone to. He made some one-year deals last offseason. This is his first multi-year deal as the president of baseball operations. And obviously it does a number of things for the Tigers, both bolstering the starting rotation with a veteran presence and then also opening the door for the Tigers to recruit other players from Japan. It's a big deal, I think.
All right, we're going to get into that, but let's get into the basics before we get into the minutia of everything and explain to us how the deal came together. You just said it's a 2-year, $24 million deal. I assume that part of the lag was knowing Scott Boras. He wanted more than 1 year, and that was a little bit of the holdup. But, talk to us about how it came together. You've been talking a little bit about the possibility of this happening for the last 2 to 3 weeks, and you, as usual, have outworked and outreported everybody about it. So give us the details.
Yeah, I mean, it really came to fruition over about the last week or so. And then, like I'd mentioned, right around Thanksgiving is the time where the two sides were really interested in making this deal happen. And there was significant momentum moving towards the deal. It seemed like there was just kind of one thing that was holding it up. What was that one thing? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe that was just, again, negotiating the finances of it all. And it was like, hey, look, this deal is going to happen one way or the other, but let's try to work on making this work for both sides. I think that might have been it. I did hear a little bit of rumblings that the Twins were interested in bringing back Kenta Maeda. I did some research on that, talked to a couple people, and I had found out that it was too early in the offseason for the Twins to even consider aggressively pursuing re-signing Maeda. The Tigers established themselves as the front runners, over the past week. So the Twins didn't really view that as a viable reunion, especially, considering the fact that the Twins were looking for maybe bringing Maeda back on a 1-year deal, which again, if Maeda's market wouldn't have generated a 2-year deal with the Tigers, maybe down the road, he would have signed back for a 1-year deal. But just at this point in the offseason, the Tigers put themselves out there as front runners, were willing to do a 2-year deal. And then at that point, it was just figuring out what the finances were. But, no opt-outs. There's no, club option, no player option, none of that kind of stuff. It's a straight 2-year deal for Kenta Maeda to be a Tiger in 2024 and 2025. And then, again, we're recording on Sunday. I had heard, probably around 4:30 on Sunday that the deal was done, just in the sense of, hey, look, like it's happening. It has been agreed to. It's going to go through. Just working on some things at this point. And then, a little bit later on, everything becomes, kind of set in stone pending the physical. So look, what does this mean for the Tigers and what does it mean for the next move, Mark? I mean, we can kind of dig into some of this, but I think it means everything for Shota Imanaga, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and Yuki Matsui. I think those are the 3 names that everybody needs to know. They need to be on your radar. We talked about Kenta Maeda for a while, going back 2-3 weeks, like you said. And I think it's important to continue talking about Imanaga and Yamamoto, and then also Matsui as well, who's a reliever, the other 2 being starting pitchers. Look, the Tigers are going to be interested in Yamamoto. They are interested in Yamamoto. Do I think that Yamamoto is a realistic landing spot when it comes to Detroit. Like, do I think they can really pull it off? I don't think so at this point, based on everything that I've heard, just because I think that's going to be a lot to get a guy like Yamamoto to want to go to Detroit and be there. Would Kenta Maeda, maybe help that? For sure. But I think it could help Imanaga a little bit more than anything. And I think Imanaga is somebody that maybe more so than Yamamoto, people should have their eyes on when it comes to the Detroit Tigers.
Well, I'm a fan of the Imanaga idea. I think that Maeda, looking at how he closed his last 88 innings of the year, is a very able replacement for Eduardo Rodriguez. Plus, they saved a little bit of money and a little bit of years from a commitment standpoint to give people an idea of how good Kenta Maeda was, at least from June 1st on, once he healed up from his injury. He ranked, I think, 20th in, ranked 20th in WAR from that time on. 20th in ERA. He ranked in the top 10 in K per nine in strikeout rate. So, and he only had a walk rate of about 6% during that period of time. So he was very effective, missed bats, doesn't need elite velocity to get people out or to strike people out. And I think when you mix it in with some of the other looks he's getting from the Tiger pitching staff, it's a pretty shrewd signing. You and I have referred to this as a floor signing. This is a worst case scenario and gives the Tigers probably 100 to 120 innings of really pretty high quality starting pitching. And it also, if they can sign another starting pitcher, gives them the capacity to deal one in a bigger time deal, maybe for a bat.
For sure. And even just to get into Kenta Maeda a little bit more, like this is, going to be year 2 for him coming off of Tommy John surgery. And obviously he wasn't great, to start the 2023 season. And it was a little bit worrisome because this is a guy who comes back from Tommy John. He really struggled in his first 4 starts. Then he lands on the injured list in late April because of a right tricep strain. But he returns to the Twins in late June, where he was at last season. And he was really good in his last 17 games. I mean, it was a 3.36 ERA, 7% walk rate, and 29% strikeout rate, over 88 in the third innings. Like you mentioned, ERA ranked 23rd, strikeout ranked 11th. Walk rate ranked 41st among 74 pitchers with at least 80 innings from June 23rd through October 1st. So when you're pitching that good down the stretch, it's obviously encouraging. I'm very fascinated to see what the Tigers are going to be able to do with him in year 2 coming back, from Tommy John surgery. I think, the splitter is obviously elite, but if they can get more out of the slider and get that back to where it used to be, I think that bodes well. He misses bats with the fastball, which is really impressive as well. That's always a really good sign for a pitcher. So definitely a lot of things to like. And then behind the scenes too, I think it's really important to note that, I went back and I read a couple stories of when the Twins clinched the AL Central in 2023, and Twins manager Rocco Baldelli described Maeda as kind of the ringleader during the clubhouse celebration. Carlos Correa, the Twins shortstop, he said Maeda was getting lit with his teammates. Like when you hear those kind of things coming from guys like Rocco Baldelli and Carlos Correa, I think that bodes well for the Tigers inside their clubhouse as well. I think it's also important to note that Kenta Maeda has been to the playoffs in 6 of his 7 seasons. So this is a guy who knows what it's like to pitch in the postseason. He knows what it's like to get there, and he knows the importance of it, right? And that's something that, none of the Tigers' young pitchers have experienced, right? Tarek Skubal, Reese Olson, Casey Mize, Matt Manning, like they haven't experienced what that's like pitching down the stretch when it's grind time and it's September and you're battling for a spot and you're trying to win the AL Central. Kenta Maeda knows what that's like, and he knows what it's like to pitch in October as well. So I think those are some really important things to note.
It's really important, and I think it's a presence that's needed on this particular staff. I think a guy like Casey Mize can probably learn a lot from Kenta Maeda. Their stuff is more similar than you think, although Mize does throw a little harder, but, much out of the same type of keyhole. So before we get to question 2 of the big 2, I want to share with everybody that we have a really great guest today, Nick Pollack, who is a founder of Pitcher List. And if you have never gone to Pitcher List, it's one of the foremost sites, both for especially for fantasy information. Nick's got a pretty long track record in the industry, invented a stat called CSW, does a huge starting pitcher roundup for fantasy, probably ranks top 200 pitchers for starting pitching in baseball. It's a go-to site if you're a fantasy player. And with further ado, we want to have him discuss Kenta Maeda and maybe some things about the Tigers starting staff. I'd like to bring in Nick Pollack from Pitchers List.
What is happening? Thank you guys so much for having me today.
Hey, we appreciate you.
Well, how's your Thanksgiving, buddy?
Oh, it was fantastic. Nice and easy with wonderful people. Exactly how Thanksgiving should be.
And I want to let everybody know, because it's so important to so many of you, not including me, that Nick shared with Evan and I that he watches one football game a year because his sister is an alumni of the University of Michigan.
That's right.
So he wanted to share that he makes sure to watch the U of M OSU game every year, and he was quite happy at the outcome.
3 straight years. And I was hailing in my living room. It's just so nice. My sister went there in 2003 and we suffered for so long. And it's so welcome. So wonderful.
It's been a long time coming. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, we're glad the Pollack family enjoyed Saturday. They don't have too much college football in Brooklyn these days, from what I can tell, right? And I'm sure you're not adopting Rutgers as your collegiate football team.
No.
So, yeah, we wanted to bring you in because the Tigers signed Kenta Maeda today. And I'm sure you have some thoughts about Kenta Maeda and what he may mean to, a pretty existing solid starting pitching staff the Tigers are building right now, and might be a good ad for them.
I just want to start by saying that if you ever suggest me being associated with a Jersey team like Rutgers again, being from Brooklyn, I don't think I'll come back on here. No, I'm really excited for Detroit about Kenta Maeda. I'm a huge Kenta Maeda stan. I feel that he doesn't get enough appreciation for what he's done in every step of his career. Kenta Maeda came with the Dodgers and had that inning stipulation on his contract for years. And the Dodgers never let him go free. They always held him back. They would start him one game and then put him in relief just because they didn't want to spend that extra money at the end of the year. And he always produced in whatever role he was in. Then he was dealt to Minnesota, where he finally was able to thrive. And what did he do? Have one of the greatest years in 2020 that everyone, I think, has kind of forgotten about. I mean, sure, it was a shortened season, about 67 innings, but it was the first time that we saw him go every time out, and he averaged about 6 innings a game to a 2.7 ERA and a 0.75 whip. He was unbelievable. And then he had Tommy John in 2021. He wasn't himself in that year. He still put up a 25% K rate in that time. And then in 2023, when he's finally returned this past year, Kenta Maeda for the Twins, he had an injury in the beginning they had to deal with, came back. Mark, as you were mentioning in June, I believe it was June 23rd that Kenta Maeda came back, and he was stellar the rest of the way. A 3 and change ERA, a sparkling whip, tons of strikeouts. He was Mr. Reliable for the Twins. It's one of those cases where you just see, Maeda, you should be starting regularly somewhere. It's unfair to him that he's old at this point, mid-30s, but 2 years for $1 million is incredible. He had a 27% K rate. Actually, 4 straight years of it. 4 of his last 5 have come with at least a 27% K rate, which essentially is just saying he's striking over a batter an inning. That's amazing. That's so good. We love to see that. His splitter was still one of the best in the majors starting in the middle of June for the rest of the year. The slider is all reliable for him. And as you mentioned, Evan, the fastball got better last year. He threw it up in the zone finally. And we all know that. 4-seamers that throw upstairs, and you're going to miss more bats there. And he's more effective with that. I think he's in a really good place. And as your guys are mentioning, the Tigers needed someone like this, I think, especially if Eduardo Rodriguez isn't signing back and he opted out and everything. We don't know where he's off to. You kind of were hoping maybe he would stick around. I don't know. But Maeda is very much that needed veteran presence. The guy who went on social media after someone made an error to end his no-hit bid and said, "Do not be upset at my teammate. He's wonderful. Thank you all so much for the support." That is such a team leader. I have so much adoration for him. And what a good deal. I mean, what they say, you don't stick to this too much, but the general rule of thumb is about $10 to $12 million a year is one WAR, which is not high. It really isn't. And you're getting just that from 1 year of Maeda. Yeah, you're going to get more than that. He's going to be a productive starter every 5 days. I'm not too concerned about injuries. I don't really think it's going to be like 100 innings. Like he's going to go more than 104 that you saw really the last 2 times he's pitched. So I'm a fan of this. I don't really understand why the baseball world is kind of like, yeah, whatever. Y'all should be celebrating about this.
Well, here's my question for you too, is if you go back and you look at what he did last year and where he ranked in terms of percentile rankings. I mean, he was 78th percentile in walk rate at 6.5, 77th percentile in strikeout rate at 27.3, 76th percentile in chase rate at 31.2, and 66% in whiff rate at 28.2. Obviously, this is a guy who's going to get his swing and misses. He's going to get his strikeouts. He can limit some walks. The one question and concern that I kind of had was, maybe some of the home runs have been an issue, maybe a little bit of a lack of ground ball contact, this year as opposed to in the past. Like, I don't know. Like, do you worry about the regression as a guy who is going into, this is really going to be his age 36 season and then his age 37 season. Like, do you worry about regression with a guy like Kenta Maeda, or do you think he does enough of the things that he does well that, like, it'll offset maybe some of the home run and some of the hard contact issues?
Yeah, that's a great question. First and foremost, too, the Tigers, I would say defensively, even with Baez, you guys are better in the outfield than the infield. And Maeda is more of a fly ball pitcher. True. But and also that as well. I believe the dimensions did just change for Detroit a little bit. Because right field's always been so messed up and the wind there and everything is just weird. But no, low ground ball rate for Maeda last year, 13th percentile of ground ball rate. So it kind of makes sense for a team that isn't well known for the infield defense. I believe is under the 20th best in the league, which is not good. I mean, that's a nice way of saying you were in the bottom 10. So having Maeda be on that team is a better fit than I think somewhere else. And when it comes to regression for a pitcher, often comes in their fastball. When it comes to the breaking stuff, sometimes we see that get better over age because that's what you need to utilize to withstand your lower velocity. Maeda's never gone by with velocity. Maeda's always gone by with his splitter and his slider. And those 2 pitches were fantastic last season. And it absolutely is probable that Maeda is going to be worse at the end of 2 seasons than he is right now. At the same time, I think that if you look at Maeda's stuff and how he throws, being a splitter slider guy is going to be one who can stave off that regression more than others.
Yeah, I think he's going to age pretty well. He's not, as you said, he's not velocity dependent. He's more deception dependent. And I think that'll, like for 2 years, I feel pretty good about it. I also like the idea they got the second year, I think works to the Tigers' favor because if for some reason they continue to get over the hump, it makes him, a decent trade candidate, to a contender for all the reasons we discussed, early. Not afraid of the moment, pitched in the playoffs numerous times, can pitch in big games. So I think it's a pretty shrewd acquisition. And I think as Ev has discussed a little bit, the Tigers have intentions on trying to be a lot more active in, the Asian market. And this is a good way to get started with it. I call this like a floor signing, and you can go after bigger, more prominent, bigger, more high ceiling names, using the idea that you already have, a vet like Maeda on the squad.
For sure. I mean, that's been the big thing, is just trying to make sure that they can get a guy like that in there and then they can tap into the Japanese pitching market. I mentioned, Shota Imanaga, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and Yuki Matsui. Those are all names to know. But even down the road too, right? I mean, even if for some reason they can't land any of those guys, there could be a year down the road, right? And they could go after and get somebody. Or maybe it's 2 or 3 years down the road when that, right player kind of falls in their lap and they're in a position to go after them. And, when that pitcher calls Kenta Maeda and says, "Hey, how was your experience in Detroit?" Kenta Maeda can answer that phone and say, "Yeah, it was great for all of these reasons," right? They helped me get better, right? They provided me with, everything that I could have ever imagined behind the scenes. I mean, this is a guy who, has played for the Dodgers, right? Like he knows what, first class experience is like for a player. And the Tigers have taken so many steps over the last year since Scott Harris was hired, providing that first class experience, for everything from redesigning the clubhouse to, going out and hiring a guy like Robin Lund, who, knows everything about biomechanics and is a former kinesiology professor at Iowa, to, bring in a new team plan that's going to debut this year, right? So, and even upgrading like hotel stays and stuff like that on the road. Like they've done a lot to take steps forward in that direction. And so, whether it's this offseason, whether it's next offseason, whether it's in 3 years, 4 years from now, whatever it is, when a pitcher picks up the phone and he's a pitcher from Japan, he wants to learn more about Detroit and he wants to call Kenta Maeda, who's very, very well respected, in Japan. You pick up that phone, you call and you say, how was it? And Kenta Maeda just raves about it. Like that's a great thing for your organization. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, I believe also Yamamoto was saying that he wants to go to a team that has a Japanese presence already. He doesn't want.
It sounds like he's open to it. That's what I had heard, is that he's open to it at least. And the same thing is true for Shota Imanaga, is that he's open to playing for any team. I also know Shota Imanaga. I guess he's single and isn't really like tied down to staying in one specific location. So obviously West Coast is a big talking point for pitchers that come from Asia, right? But he's open to going anywhere. He's open to playing with, fellow players in Japan. I even think too, like, when Imanaga was breaking into Nippon Professional Baseball, which is the league in Japan, what was Kenta Maeda doing? He was signing and playing for the Dodgers as a rookie, right? Coming into the big league. So right when Imanaga was making his emergence in Japan, that's the same time that Maeda was making his emergence in the big leagues in America. So I think that's, kind of natural that a guy like Imanaga would look up to somebody like Maeda. And I think the same could be true for Yamamoto. It's really fascinating how many different avenues this could go for the Tigers. But I do like the fact, and we got to dig into this, Mark, is they do have, some pretty established pitchers in there. Sure, they're young, but the stuff is really good.
Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Nick about the rest of the Detroit Tigers starting staff, get his impressions of it, and we can discuss what maybe 2024 starts looking like for the Detroit Tigers starting pitchers. We'll be back in a minute. We want to talk now about one of the strengths of the Detroit Tigers, their starting pitching staff. Obviously, they have some really good arms. You got Casey Mize coming back next year, who obviously did not throw an inning in 2023. You have Tarik Skubal, who was probably the most impressive arm in the American League in the second half of 2023. You got Reese Olson, who was really, really good the last 2 months. So I'm kind of curious, you're a starting pitching expert. Give us your thoughts about the type of staff the Tigers have put together, how you saw them in 2023, and what you think 2024 is starting to shape up as.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement in Detroit. Tarik Skubal, what he does is, it's everything that you want for a young pitcher to be able to do, especially coming back from injury. Tarik Skubal increases fastball velocity, so he throws harder. And that pitch was arguably the best pitch in baseball for the second half of the year. He was better than every other pitcher at getting strikes with it. He was better at avoiding bad contact on it. He was better at getting whiffs on the pitch than anyone else. And yeah, that's better than Spencer Strider, who you might know has an amazing fastball, or Garrett Cole, or anyone else. And the question really is, can Tarik Skubal do that outside of just 80 innings? When he's finally so energized to come back onto the field, he has that extra velocity, he has that extra adrenaline at first. Are we going to see that across a full year? And I sure hope so. His changeup was also just as deadly of a weapon as anything. When we normally talk about swinging strike rates, think of it just like 20%. It's like, oh yeah, you're pumping your fist for that. He did it nearly 30% of the time, which is just insane. Think of it as no one misses changeups or throws a changeup that misses bats as often as Tarik Skubal's. And to have that 1-2 punch, regardless of the slider, that I think actually has room to grow to become more of a consistent tool for Skubal to take down lefties. There's a lot of things to like here. And there's a lot of questions to see what kind of sustainability we're going to see across a full year, because there has to be a moment, and just for every pitcher, where you do stumble, you start to lose it a little bit. The fastball locations get a little bit worse. The change maybe isn't there for a game. What steps up? And we didn't really have enough time to see that from Skubal. I'm really curious how he'll be to get through that adversity, because truly when I enjoy someone like Skubal, it's when they're in season and they have that hump and then they get over it. That's a lesson. That is something that sticks with you. it makes you even more confident because the next time you have that stumble, you know what to do to pick yourself back up. So just from the start of it, Tarek Skubal is the rock for this team. And I would be so unbelievably thrilled. I'm curious if you guys see Tarek Skubal as anything differently than I do.
I see him as a 2024 Cy Young candidate. So I was going to ask you if I'm crazy.
That's cold.
No, for real though. Like Tarek Skubal, I found it very fascinating when he came back from injury. He talked a lot about working with, pitching coach Chris Federer and assistant pitching coach Robin Lund. As he was going through his rehab, they worked on tweaking some of his mechanics and his delivery and the way in which he was going about moving down the mound. And that he said that helped him improve his fastball velocity. So he sure thinks that it's going to be here to stay. I definitely see some of that because he came out firing like nobody's business. And it wasn't just like it was, his first start back, it was coming out of his hand hot. It was like, no, it was sustainable over and over and over again. Even as the Tigers were out of contention, like it was still there. So I think that's really encouraging. But Nick, am I crazy to think like 2024 Cy Young candidate that like nobody's really talking about because he hasn't had a full season where he's been healthy, really at all? I mean, he was even on innings limits when, he was healthy back in 2021. So this is really the first we're going to see of a full Tarek Skubal kind of unleashed.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to, I say this often, it's when you see a guy perform and locate well on a given day, it's not that he didn't deserve to do well that day. He did, but we just don't know if he's going to do exactly the same thing the next day to also deserve that success. And, the hardest thing in baseball is to consistently locate. Skubal got worse at it. And he still had success with it, but it did make me a little more skeptical, especially considering he didn't face the toughest of offenses last year. And Skubal, if he doesn't get that four-seamer upstairs a ton where it's just more in the middle of the plate, he's going to be more susceptible to damage and not have as much success. Of course, also with the slider, it's something that I think can cause trouble for Skubal a ton as well, especially against left-handers. The changeup is not going to be as much of a weapon against lefties. So we're going to see that development a little bit through the year with Skubal. And actually, to your point about Tommy John, I remember talking to Jameson Taillon about this when he was going through Tommy John and saying how he had to relearn his mechanics. He was so excited because he could finally fix some of the things that he always had, but never really had the time to change. And now when you bring it all down, you can build it back up the way that you want. So it doesn't surprise me at all that we have seen guys like Skubal in the past be better when they return from Tommy John, not because, of course, that they were hurt before, but also they can make those extra little tweaks in that extra time to improve. So I'm really excited about it. It's not out of the question that Skubal could be a contender for the Cy Young in 2024.
I think one of the most interesting things about the evolution of Skubal last year is, as he started early, he would have an inning or two from a location standpoint where he'd make, mistakes or maybe he'd nibble a little too much. And as time went on, that went away, threw inside to hitters, especially with his fastball a lot more. And Evan and I would text each other a lot of times during starts because, what you really like to see in a power pitcher like Skubal is there are just days he just bullies the other team.
Yeah.
It's just, he's just pumping. He's in the zone. He's not worried he's in the strike zone because he's just bullying other teams. They can't do anything with him. And he didn't have innings like that. He had games like that. And then he started stringing them together. So what we had seen in flashes before, we saw in a lot more than just flashes last year. And I think your point's well taken, though, because, look, he threw July and August and September. But, July, August, and September is April, May, and June. And then you still got July, August, and September left. So that's a whole other situation is after you have 75, 80 innings on you, now you got to go out and throw another 60, 70 innings to finish the year. It's a lot of wear and tear on somebody's arm, and you got to prove you can do it.
Definitely.
So that'll be the interesting part. But Tigers have a lot of other really interesting arms. I mean, Casey Mize is coming back from TJ. You also got if you didn't hear this, he got a little bit of back surgery and disclosed it was something that had bothered him for years. Also discussed that he was fighting a lot of elbow soreness. Almost from the time he signed with the Tigers, he had some issues with that at Auburn. So we're hoping to see a pretty healthy Mize. Another person, much like Skubal is, that really loves pitching metrics, loves pitching design, loves using data to tweak his stuff. And I'll expect that he's been doing quite a bit of that in his time off. He's been throwing since of like July, he started throwing again, right? So he's had some time to do some pitch design. So give us your thoughts maybe on Mize and a few of these other Tiger starters.
Well, one of the things I want to mention about Skubal is that he has a four-seamer, and I love guys that dominate with four-seamers. It is, despite all of us talking about sweepers this year and other breaking balls and everything, though four-seamers from starting pitchers that dominate are where you find elite starters. And it's very rare to have elite starting pitching that is hyper reliant on sliders or sinkers or curveballs or changeups. You have to have a four-seamer that is dominating the zone, like you guys said, bullying. And it's hard to do that without that pitch. And the thing about Casey Mize that bothered me a bit before Tommy John was that he didn't have a dominating fastball. His sinker is okay, and never to me was something that I had a lot of confidence in when watching him. When he got drafted from Auburn and through the minors, there were really two things I constantly heard about him. One is that his splitter was everything. The splitter was the pitch. Everything is about the splitter. And the second was that there were injury concerns back then. I am encouraged that he is on the other side of a major injury, and hopefully that does give him a little bit more runway at this point. I still, in the back of my head, it's hard for me to pencil in 150 innings from Casey Mize this year. That is traditionally what I say coming back from Tommy John, especially in his situation where he's not entering halfway in the season like Skubal would be. From the start of the year, you generally don't see more than 150, which once again makes the Maeda signing that much more understandable. So you throw in that little bit of, okay, is he going to be able to go every 5 days to really refine this and get into that rhythm that we want? Is he going to have something different than we saw before? Because the new slider that he had was actually really good. And it's the reason I was warming up a little bit. It was a very reliable pitch inside the zone for Mize. And one of those pitches that you just kind of throw in any count and it's okay. Not really the biggest whiff pitch. And that was a splitter, which I'll be honest with you guys, the most inconsistent pitch in baseball is a splitter, save for like Maeda's and Gosman's and maybe Senga's, but kind of Senga's is really inconsistent too. Splitters are not reliable because you have to jam the ball into your fingers as opposed to find the seams on the ball. And if you do that once, you realize it's never going to be in the same spot twice. And you can't just pause the game until you get the exact right one. So it's going to be a little bit different every single time you throw it. And you saw that from Mize. There were some games where it was really good and some games he just didn't have it and he had to move on to something else. So I'm really curious to see what Casey Mize has. Is it going to still be a sinker focus? Is it going to be one where he's really trying to just jam right-handers, or is it more called strikes over the plate? Is it a slider that can get whiffs now, or is it still the same old just get strikes and kind of move on? Because I don't think that's enough. So if there's extra velocity, like we saw with Tarik Skubal, if he is embracing pitch design and saying, you know what, maybe I can develop that four-seamer and be strong with that instead, that would be very exciting for me. I'm just at a point of wait and see. At the very least, he's not going to be unproductive. You're still going to get productive baseball MLB innings here. But that feeling of a potential guy at the top of your rotation, I think I still need to see more and something new than we saw before.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating for Casey Mize. And I wonder, too, how much of it for him really comes down to what's the location going to be, right? Mm-hmm. Like, where are you going to be able to locate your pitches at a consistent rate? Because that was another thing, obviously coming out of Auburn, that everyone was really high on the fact that he could locate. And when he came to the Tigers, he did not locate the same way that he used to. And, even going back to when he was healthy, he had the 5-pitch mix of the 4-seamer, the 2-seamer, slider, curveball, and then obviously the splitter. And the splitter was his big pitch.
Yeah,
I'll be interested to see because I think he's going to change his pitch mix a little bit. I would be probably thinking that he's going to go more 4-seam. That's kind of the rumblings that I've heard around him, and maybe less sinker, getting away from it. We'll see if that ends up holding true. But another thing, too, that concerns me is this was a guy who started his throwing program. He went through it all. And I don't want to take anything away from Casey Mize, because I think that when Casey Mize is at his best, I think he can be really good. I think he could, if he's at his best, be a really key addition to the Tigers pitching staff. I think he, again, I don't want to take anything away from Tarik Skubal, but I think he could be a very good number 2 for the Tigers when he is at his best in its entirety. The question is he ever going to be able to be his best? Because this was a guy who started his throwing program, went through it all, and did his first live BP, and in his second live BP had to shut it down because of some soreness and because of some fatigue that he was having, and didn't really get things, really going again. Like, yes, he did go down to Lakeland. He did continue throwing into October and was throwing bullpens. But again, they were hoping to continue to increase that intensity, maybe get him into a rehab game. That never even happened because, again, there's some fatigue there. So, like, how much concern does that give you when a guy's on the back end of both Tommy John and back surgery? And then also, too, like, how much of command is kind of the X factor for Casey Mize, regardless of where he's at?
Yeah, I don't know. Look, if he has amazing command, he'll be great. Anyone with a decent repertoire and you can locate everything, you're good. It's really about the days where, okay, I'm not putting this fastball right where I want to put it. And guys will jump on that, right? The four-seamer we saw in 2021, 2022, he was in his 10 innings leaning much more four-seamer than sinker. I still think of him as that guy that was really relying on sinkers getting inside and getting those ground balls that way or stealing strikes inside the zone, while the four-seamer did get some whiffs, but still was much more hittable than we would want it to be. It's possible, but you're right. I think we see this time and time again. Those that have any sort of stumbles, it's never really quite smooth. We always like to think, but if it all comes together, it should work. And there's a reason why there are those stumbles, especially this early in his career. It's not really just going to magically go away. Typically, that would be much more rare than expected. So I would be very concerned. I don't think that there is a clear path until I see something brand new from Casey Mize. Really to suggest like, hey, he's going to be in rhythm right away. I think that's a massive ask. And unless I see something brand new, he gets more movement on the fastball or the slider is a brand new break on it and all that kind of stuff, which you just have to shrug and hope for. Unless, of course, you're Ev here who has all the amazing information. But yeah, Casey Mize, I would not have that anticipation.
For sure. Hey, one pitcher I want to touch on really quick because we have two really fun pitchers in Reese Olson and Sawyer Gibson-Long.
Yes, you do.
I do want to ask about Matt Manning, though, really quick, because that was kind of supposed to be the three-headed monster for the Tigers, right? It was supposed to be Casey Mize, Matt Manning, Tarek Skubal. Where are you at with Matt Manning right now? What are you seeing from the stuff? This is a guy who just was supposed to strike out a ton of guys, and he doesn't strike out anybody, but the ERA is still pretty good. Where are you at, and how should we be evaluating Matt Manning?
He's fine. He's a back at the rotation guy, in my view. There are days that Matt Manning can go 95 as opposed to 93 on the four-seamer and not throw meatballs. And that is fine. The slider is good. It's just not a major whiff pitch. It's the one that saves him. And it saved him a lot last year. He had a really nice run at the end of the year. I think it was just a couple earned runs across 4 starts. But the curveball, that was the thing that everyone said, look at Matt Manning's curveball. It's beautiful. I'm like, yes, it is. And he's just going to use it early in counts to steal a called strike here and there. That is not what defines him. It's really that slider. I don't think the fastball is good enough. I think we need to see something change over the offseason that can make me believe in that four-seamer really bullying, as you guys mentioned with Skubal again. Batters are really like that, but I'm going to steal that. And the slider, again, is not a premier secondary pitch. It's a very solid one. It's one of those that would set up a big whiff pitch if he had one, but he doesn't. So to me, he's someone that you're going to throw and you're going to hope for 5 or 6, and that's cool, but it's not going to be this pumping your fist again. Yeah, Matt Manning, I can't wait. I'm so happy he's having his breakout. If he does do well over a stretch, it's not going to last in all likelihood.
I want to ask you something, Nick. You are or are not a believer in savant run value? So when they,
no,
I'm just, you're not a believer.
Savant run value is a result stat. That is, it's pretty much saying, look, based on the results, we're going to give a positive or negative. I am much more about the actual arsenal itself and how it comes together. And how, pitches can do well and have great results. We see it all the time. My favorite example is look at Cal Quantrill with the Guardians, now with the Rockies. No one was really jumping to go and get Cal Quantrill here, but good run value on that sinker and cutter, right? He's gotten good results on it and not in a way that we kind of expected it to. So I want to like him more, but I mean, just low strikeout rates from Matt Manning, too reliant on defense. Things have gone well for him, but it's not going to last.
We could all agree, though, right? Like, we would much rather see 95 to 97 out of Matt Manning like we thought we were going to see when he was a minor league prospect, as opposed to, 92, 93. Like, that's your point, right, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, if that is a capability, like if that is something he can do, which we do see every so often, Matt Manning is a much better pitcher. He just isn't able to do that with consistency at the moment. And when he has thrown 95, it hasn't also come with the command that we do see at 92, 93. So there is something that's got to improve here.
Probably the first pitcher the Tigers are willing to deal, but, I still have to say that Matt Manning, kind of a conundrum almost. It's strange how few whiffs he gets, but at the same time, when his best starts are very four-seam heavy and, almost, beyond 60% as a pitch mix. And there's like a weird version of him that has a lot of similarities to Zach Wheeler, to be really honest with you, from an extension standpoint, a size standpoint. And the weirdest part about Manning is I don't know if you remember this, Nick, but when he was in Double-A and he would come up to spring training, he was throwing 98, 100. So the fact that he coasts at 92, 93, the elite extension obviously helps him. But yeah, I think we've all for the last 3 years wondered where that extra 2-3 miles an hour of cruising speed on his four seam is. And, he will get up to 95, 96, especially in the fifth and sixth inning when he starts emptying the tank a little bit. But yeah, he's got a really tough to hit fastball, and it's proven to be a true fact the last 2-3 years. And to the point, Evan and I laugh about this, but there was a game last year. He was throwing so many sliders early and had not really had a good start previously that Fetter walked out to the mound, and we were both laughing before he even got there because we knew it was going to happen. And there was a pretty aggressive one-way discussion when Fetter hit the mound. And I would say he was, pretty close to 65, 70% fastballs after that. And they pretty much didn't touch him. So it's a weird conundrum with Matt Manning. All right, we'll move on from Matt Manning. He frustrates pretty much everybody. So I wanted to quickly get to Reese Olson, who was obviously much better than people realize, especially the last 2 months of the year. And, SGL, Sawyer Gipson-Long was really good. His 4 starts, really an interesting pitch mix. So tell us what your stuff says about those two guys.
I mean, Reese Olson's incredibly exciting. Slider and changeup. When the changeup actually is located properly, it can miss so many bats. Actually, that was the first pitch that really wowed me from him. And then I realized, oh, wait, his slider is phenomenal. Reese Olson has such a good slider. And it's really reliable. Like, this is a pitch that he can do in any, he can do anything that he wants in any count. He can get whiffs on it. He can get strikes on it. He's super good at locating that down and glove side. So always down and away to right-handers. He wants to get a strike over the plate early in the count. He can do that. And when he's at his best with that changeup, of course, there's also these 2 fastballs that I really do believe that Reese Olson utilizes correctly. That is, he really tries to get inside right-handers with that sinker and then tries to go upstairs with that four-seamer. And there are games when Reese Olson executes brilliantly, and I love this man. Then there are other days that just can't do it. And that's kind of typical for someone who's thrown about 100 innings. But I think there's a lot to like about Reese Olson. I'm a big fan moving forward with him. I remember hearing a debate about Reese Olson versus Sawyer Gipson-Long and who's going to get more innings in the year ahead. And to me, it's very clear that Olson should be a part of it. I heard Alex Faedo in that conversation too. I was like, no. Reese Olson is that guy. I think if Maeda wasn't around, he'd be my second favorite on the Tigers for this year ahead. And with Sawyer Gipson-Long, I love what he does. I actually call him kind of a Logan Webb light in how he throws sinkers low and gets called strikes with those, and then has a changeup that does also miss bats in that way. There is, of course, a slider that utilizes pretty differently, much better, I think, than Webb's currently. But of course, he doesn't have Webb's 50% changeup usage now, which is absolutely insane. I just think of Trevor Hoffman all the time when he starts these days. But Sawyer Gipson-Long, I think, has that good floor when it comes to I can pound the zone with a sinker and actually not make a ton of mistakes with it. I can keep that down and use like a true sinker and a good, reliable slider and a more consistent changeup, I think, than Reese Olson's. However, Olson's slider sets him apart to me. And the 2 separate fastballs doing, I think, better things as well. So both very exciting guys. I would be very disappointed if either one did not go over 140 innings this year. And even with the Maeda signing, and you see that, okay, Sawyer Gipson-Long is not going to be there out of the gate. He has to be the first option there. And as we were talking about with Mize, and I would even say Matt Manning, of course, has injury concerns too. And Maeda hasn't really gone 180 innings before. You're going to see Sawyer Gipson-Long entrenched in that rotation soon enough. And I don't think he's going to relinquish the spot after that.
Nick, can I just ask you really quick, Reese Olson, what's the ceiling there? Like, how good can that guy be?
Well, I don't know yet. It's kind of interesting. I think a lot about player development and which organizations I really trust to get the most out of their guys and really change someone. And this is not an insult to Detroit when I say that only the Rays, Astros, and Dodgers have ever really put any sort of weight to a team saying, yes, they are the ones who are going to get the very best out of their pitchers. And in some ways, the Astros are not as much as they used to. It's really just the Dodgers and Rays that seem to have that golden touch. On the other side of it, there are about 5 or 6 clubs that just can't. I have zero faith in whatsoever, and does not include Detroit. So let's just put it that way, where there's a lot of times where you don't know if a pitcher is going to unlock something with that organization or not. And a lot of times organizations have certain paths that they think work better molds for different kinds of pitchers. And some pitchers fit into that and some just don't. I think Reese Olson has a very obvious mold. And that's a good thing. Sometimes guys show up and you don't really know what to do with their arsenal. I think with Reese Olson, it's very clear what he should be doing. I think the Tigers are going to be embracing that. And because of that, Reese Olson's going to have that slider. It's just about, okay, are the fastballs going to take that leap or not? That's up to him. It's a big shrug. I hope he can. And there's a lot of potential if he does. He's very young. There is, I think, a lot of innate good qualities of that fastball, good movement on it. Better than average command, I would say, from a lot of young guys who just kind of rip it and throw it. So, I mean, I don't know. Upsides is such a hard thing to say. Like, he doesn't throw 97, 98, right? So if he gets that velocity, then that will be there too. He doesn't have the greatest command ever, but he has one very, very good secondary already. And that's already a leg up on a lot of pitchers in the majors.
For sure. Hey, last thing before we let you go, the Japanese pitchers, we've talked about them a lot. How much do you know about Yamamoto and Imanaga in particular, and just in terms of kind of what they bring? Yamamoto being a 25-year-old, Imanaga being a 30-year-old with a little bit more experience.
I want to tell you guys one thing really quickly. Evan is such a kind host. I mentioned beforehand that I'm really bad at relievers. And he had mentioned 4 relievers he wanted to talk about and is not doing any of them because I said that. So, Evan, you're the greatest.
I got you.
But no, Yamamoto Imanaga, honestly, I think there's so much attention on Yamamoto, and he is going to get a mega deal because he really has a 4-pitch mix that is just all fantastic. And he does so with a low walk rate. He is going to be a rock for a team for a long time. I don't see this as one of those deals that he signs let's say 5-6 years and then he's just not good by the 3rd. No, this is a high floor contract, I think, for any team that signs him. Imanaga is going to be a discount, and I want him on any team. I think Imanaga gets underrated because he's not as hard of a thrower as Yamamoto, and there's still a little bit of polish needed on locating the slider. If you remember from the World Baseball Classic against the United States, Imanaga started that championship game, and the only run he allowed was off the bat of Trey Turner. And you can say, oh, well, Trey Turner was really hot. Well, if you watch that at bat, he threw a terrible slider to him in an account where Trey Turner was actually looking for a fastball and was still able to just make the simple adjustment to hit it out of the park. And it's those little adjustments that I think Imanaga will be able to make when he's got an amazing 4-seamer that, even though it's at 93, 94, sometimes 95, misses bats. It's very deceptive. It stays up much longer than other pitches, which makes it so hard to hit. And he takes advantage of that. A fantastic forkball as well. Big curveball to get strikes. Like, he commands well. Imanaga is a polished pitcher, and it could be even better than what we've seen in MPB. So both of those guys I like a lot more than we normally see from Asian imports. And it's kind of wild. So if the Tigers say, you know what, we're not going to spend on the Yamamoto, but we might be able to get Imanaga, yeah, you should be jumping at that one too.
Well, I'm nodding my head there.
Yeah, well, we're both big fans of Imanaga. We think he'd fit really well with the Tigers. So we're hopeful that that's something that may be on the horizon for the 2024 season. All right, Nick, we can't thank you enough for spending so much time with us this weekend. That everybody wants to find you. Obviously, they can find you at pitcherlist.com and on any other social media sites. Where can they find you?
Yeah, follow me at PitcherList on Twitter. Also, I watch live games and stream every single morning. If you have any questions for me, I go to playback.tv/PitcherList. I'm just hanging out and watching pitchers and analyzing them for baseball. So come hang out if you have any questions about the sport. I'd love to see you.
All right. We loved having you. We're obviously going to try to talk to you again during the season. We hope you have a good holiday season, and thanks for taking time to talk to us tonight.
Oh, thank you guys so much.
Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to take our last break. We'll be back in a minute. Thanks a lot to Nick Pollack for coming on and talking starting pitchers with us. Obviously, a wealth of information, a ton of perspective, sophisticated perspective. We'll be excited to see how everything transpires that we discuss. But the GM meetings are coming up soon, Ev. Another trip for Evan Petzold. This time you have to grin and bear it and go to the really quiet town of Nashville and try to see if you can find something to do in Nashville for 3 or 4 or 5 days.
Hey, it's winter meetings this time, not GM meetings. So it's basically GM meetings on steroids. So it's been pretty much everybody in baseball is going to be in Nashville. It's going to be a wild time, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm feeling so bad for you that you have to go to Nashville and hang out, discuss baseball for a week. It should be terrible, really difficult to do. There's no place to listen to music or be entertained at night or have a beer. Nashville's just nothing to do there. All right, so you got the winter meetings coming up. You're going to start seeing a lot more signings and trade activities starting literally right now. I think Maeda will kick it off. You've got Yamamoto posted. They're going to post Imanaga tomorrow. You got a Kenta Maeda press conference this week. A lot of fun stuff. But let's talk at least a little bit about some potential trades. You have a target. I have a target. We can at least throw that stuff out there because it's the winter meetings. So, none of these things ever come true. But we can at least discuss some things we both like. So let's go over that. You had a trade idea. You talk to me about it.
Yeah, look, I think when it comes down to what the Tigers need to do moving forward, I do think that something on their list needs to be finding a solution for what happens if Javier Baez doesn't get any better, right? And I'm not saying that he's not going to get any better. I think there's a chance he does. We've discussed it in the podcast. Go to freep.com. You can read about what he's trying to do this offseason to get himself better, right? But let's just say that it doesn't work out. And you're looking at Javier Baez and you're paying him, $98 million over the next 4 seasons. He's under contract and you're kind of just stuck with him through 2027, right? Like if Javier Baez doesn't turn it around, is he really going to be with the Tigers in the 2027 season? I don't think so. I'm not buying that. I think that at some point, the Tigers are going to need to move on from Javier Baez if he doesn't find a fix. They're going to have to eat some of that contract. They want to be competitive. I think if they're competitive in 2024, they're probably a year early. 2025 is probably the realistic target year for, yes, we're going to be kind of clear favorites to win the AL Central. And this is kind of where we're headed now. We are on this path. We are in this direction. That's where they want to be, I think, by 2025. And so if Javier Baez isn't good in 2025, you're not going to bring him back for 2026, 2027. I mean, again, that's a lot of money because then you're looking at $48 million, over those last 2 years. But at the same time, what if they go out and get a potential replacement for him? I don't think it's ever bad to have potential replacements for guys. The Tigers have no shortstops in their system. So here's my name, Noelvi Marte. He's a 22-year-old from the Cincinnati Reds. The Cincinnati Reds, they need pitching. I think a Matt Manning for Noelvi Marte trade could be a good deal for the Tigers. I think it would help them stock the farm system a little bit. And I know everybody wants them to upgrade the offense and, try to find answers. But where are you really going to upgrade at? Maybe third base, but at the same time, you're probably looking at some combination of Jace Young and Colt Keith at second base and third base into the future. Torkelson's at first base. Javier Baez is your shortstop for now. DH is going to be a combination of numerous guys. Your outfield's pretty much set with Riley Green, Parker Meadows, Kerry Carpenter, Mark Canha for next year at least. They don't really have like an immediate need for a positional player, considering the fact that they want to let these young guys play. So why not go out, get another young guy, restock the farm system a little bit, and get yourself a shortstop if you need him, if Javier Baez doesn't get it back together. And if he does figure it out and he does get it back together, then you know what? So be it. So be it. Javier Baez is a guy who, if he's around, he's around. And a guy like Marte could play third base, right? Like we've seen him do that. But I think having some type of insurance there would be really beneficial for the Tigers. I think Marte could be a guy that, maybe he starts out playing in AAA Toledo and if he breaks through, he breaks through. We'll see what happens. But I think that's an interesting name to look at. And I think Matt Manning would probably move the needle there.
I think it's worth having a discussion since he has got some interesting arms in their rotation. They got Hunter Green, Andrew Abbott, Graham Ashcroft, all interesting. Nothing really consistent. Manning probably fits right in with those three. Probably have to throw in another arm, either a Brisky or a Flores, and Akil Badu. Try to expand the trade a little bit. Marte's got a good chance of starting at third base for Cincinnati, but they also have Spencer Steer. They have a few choices. They're definitely infield depth heavy. Love the idea. I think he'd probably start at third base right out of spring training if they were able to pull that deal off.
But Mark, even if not though, what about a guy like Edwin Arroyo, right, for the Reds as well, who has only reached the AA level, and he's somebody that would probably give you a little bit more time. He could marinate in the minor leagues a little bit, and he probably would be ready to play by 2026. That might even be a better trade scenario for them. And that might be something that the Reds actually agree to. If you wanted to move, Marte for a Manning straight up, they might not agree to that. But I think maybe a Manning for a guy like Edwin Arroyo, who's going to play shortstop for, he's going to be a shortstop, right? So I think that could be a potential even better deal. Granted, it doesn't have as much of an immediate impact, which I know is going to bother some people, but I really like Edwin Arroyo if they could pull that off as well. I think that might even be a more realistic deal.
It's well worth considering for Cincy. I mean, they have Dela Cruz and McClain to play shortstop, where they figure out how to sort that out between short and second. It's not like they don't have depth. So that's a decent idea. I think we've discussed some things that I like, and I've mentioned this many times before, that I always like to go try to pillage the Oakland Las Vegas A's because they're just so terrible about making trades. So I have mentioned that I'm very intrigued by Ken Waldachuk, left-hander, huge extension, pretty big fastball, decent emerging slider, not too old. Like to see what Chris Federick and group could do with him. Also like their starting pitcher Sears, who threw 150 innings, smallish, bulldogish, but pretty darn good. And also have a lot of interest in one of their relievers, Lucas Urseg, who throws very hard, has a really good slider, not the greatest of command, but was pretty damn good the last 6 weeks of the season. I'm intrigued by it. I could see them having some interest once again in a player like Wilmer Flores, Montero, both of those guys, maybe even a Ty Madden, Justin Henry Malloy. I wouldn't be surprised to see them shop Brent Rooker at the meetings here. It's the kind of guy that Oakland likes to shop, who hit 29 homers for him last year. Oakland likes young guys who are cheap and controllable. The Tigers have a few of those. And, they kind of match up pretty well. You want to get guys that maybe the Tigers can polish and get some productivity out of. So I think more than anything, if the Tigers are going to spend money on starting pitching, the smartest thing they can do is make sure they add another leverage reliever. I was very fond of Reynaldo Lopez, but so was Alex Anthopoulos, and was willing to pay him $10 million a year for 3 years. So, we need to hope that Scott Harris and Mr. Greenberg are searching to try to figure out how to add some more leverage relievers for next year, because it'd be a shame to add more starters and not have a really shut down bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty spot on. I do like the fact that the Tigers are going to have a lot of guys that are, these bulk reliever types coming into camp. I mean, that could be everybody from Joey Wentz to Alex Faedo. And obviously we all know about, Tyler Holden and what he gave the Tigers. But again, yeah, you are looking for maybe one more back-end guy that can really lock it down. And you know what? Maybe that comes internally. They've done a great job, developing pitchers, and maybe they can find that as kind of like a diamond in the rough, and they can get their guy and they can build him into a leverage reliever, and there he is. But at the same time, what if they can't? And also, what if they can, and then they also get somebody else on top of that? I mean, then you have a pretty stacked bullpen and you're feeling really good about yourself in the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th innings. Whereas right now, I think there's a little bit of a concern with Alex Lang. I think he is like a step away from being great. But at the same time, he's also kind of in that, below average to bad range when he can't throw strikes. So like, there's a little bit of a concern there, of course, just because of the fact that he has trouble throwing strikes and locating his pitches. Outside of that, it's kind of Jason Foley. And you're going to need to bulk that up a little bit if you want to have success, down the stretch and when it comes time to win games. And then going back to Andrew Chafin might not be a bad idea. There's no way his market's any good at this point. So
I'd also like him to kick the tires on Liam Hendriks and see from a health standpoint in general, that might be a buy low kind of signing. Obviously, Liam Hendriks is pretty damn good when healthy. So that's something they may want to check in on. That's a free agent not too many people are talking about also. And if he is healthy, is somebody that could be pretty damn helpful. And they could probably get him for much less money than he was paid in his last deal based on how, his health's been the last year. So
for sure. No, so just to kind of recap too, Waldichuk and Urseg for Mark from the Oakland Athletics, that's your, what you would like to do or your trade idea, your speculation of what maybe could happen. And I know I mentioned Noelvi Marte, but honestly, Edwin Arroyo, I think, just as I look at this a little bit more, makes a lot more sense from the fact that, Arroyo is a guy who's 20 years old. He's a switch hitter. He plays shortstop. He's somebody that, could be emerging by the time that the Tigers need to move on from Javier Baez if he doesn't turn it around. So I'm going to officially say I will speculate, or my trade idea, however you want to put it, would be some type of combination of like a Matt Manning and maybe somebody else. But going out and getting a guy like Edwin Arroyo, I think would be really smart for the Tigers. I really don't think the Reds are going to give up Marte, but
yeah,
Arroyo could be a guy.
I would also say that it wouldn't shock me if the Tigers and the Cardinals actually had a few discussions about a few things. Cardinals have a few position players worth having a discussion about. And if they're going to shop Matt Manning, I'm sure St. Louis would be more than happy to at least have a discussion about that. So
all speculation for now, but we'll see.
All right, Ev. It's been a long week. You got a University of Michigan football victory, which I know that you took Savvy to, which was a lot of fun, I'm sure. And Thanksgiving, I got to be a grandpa for a few days. That was a lot of fun for me and an uncle. Got to see a lot of my family, had a good time. So going to get ready for a lot more baseball action this week. It was kind of a dead week last week. You got a lot, as we've mentioned, you got a lot of stuff that you'll be doing this week. So I would like to remind everybody to rate, share, comment, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can always find us at thefreep.com, aside from every single place that puts out podcasts. I would like to thank our executive producer and sports editor, Kirk Crawford, executive producer, Anjanette Delgado, and Free Press chief editor, Nicole Avery Nichols. And as always, our boy, who always makes us sound good, Robin Chan, former partner, Evan Petzold. I'd like to say, peace.